विश्व के 220 करोड़ देशवासियों को वैक्सीन लगाकर देश की जनता की मदद तो की है। वैक्सीन, पीपीई किट रहा था और विशेष रूप से हम जानते हैं इस कोरोना काल के अंतर्गत कुछ हमारी एमएसएमई सिख हुई थी, कुछ उद्योग भी सिख हुए थे। वो किसी तरीके से अपने कारीगरों को, अपने काम करने वाले कामगारों को जब देश की वित्त मंत्री ने पिछली बार जब बजट पेश किया था, उस समय करीब 50,000 करोड़ रुपए का और योगदान इसमें देकर ECLGS योजना के अंतर्गत इन उद्योगों की मदद की थी। कुल मिलाकर 5 लाख करोड़ रुपए की मदद इस योजना के अंतर्गत हुई है। उसमें 3.7 लाख करोड़ रुपए MSME और अन्य उद्योगों को दिए गए हैं। अभी भी ये योजना 31 मार्च 2023 तक लागू है। हो सकता कुछ ऐसे उद्योग हों जिन्हें अभी भी मदद हो, वो उद्योग इस योजना के माध्यम से मदद ले सकते हैं। देश के यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री जी ने समय समय पर वोकल फॉर लोकल का आह्वान किया है। कि हमें देसी वस्तुओं का निर्माण करना चाहिए और अपनी उद्योगों में जिस वस्तु का निर्माण कर रहे हैं, बना रहे हैं, उसका उपयोग भी मुझे करना चाहिए और हमारी MSME को लोकल टू ग्लोबल के मंत्र को साकार करना चाहिए। इसी से अमृत काल में नए भारत का निर्माण होगा, क्योंकि हम जानते हैं कि देश के यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री जी के इस आह्वान के मूल में यदि हम देखें तो हम पाते हैं कि पंडित दीनदयाल उपाध्याय जी का वो एकात्म मानववाद का दर्शन और महात्मा गांधी जी का ग्राम उद्योगों को पुनर्जीवित करने का प्रयास और वीर सावरकर का स्वदेशी उद्योगों को बढ़ावा देना, आज हम सब लोग विशेष रूप से 2014 में हमारी जो अर्थव्यवस्था 10वें नंबर पर थी, आज 2023 तक आते आते हमारा देश भारत में 5वें नंबर पर आ गया है और 2014 में हमारी प्रति व्यक्ति आय जो थी, आज 2023 में आते आते 1.97 लाख रुपए हो गई है। मैं कह सकता हूं 2013 के बाद, 2014 के बाद आज हमारी जो प्रति आय है देश की, वो दुगनी हो गई है। आज मैं जो आज कुछ एमओयू हुए हैं, मंत्रालय के साथ, और अभी हम लोगों ने देखा कि जो समझौता हुआ है उसके लिए मैं मंत्रालय और के अधिकारियों को बधाई देता हूं, और जिनके साथ ये समझौता हुआ है उन्हें भी बधाई देता हूं कि निश्चित ही इस समझौते से निश्चित एमएसएमई को बल मिलेगा, और एमएसएमई जिस तरीके से प्रगति कर रही है देश के योगदान में, ये हमारा एमएसएमई सेक्टर उसमें प्रगति करेगा। विशेष रूप से ज़्यादा ना बोलते हुए पुनः मैं आप सब लोगों को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं कि आप लोगों ने जो हमारे मिंड के अधिकारी हैं, जिन्होंने एक अच्छा सा एमएसएमई कॉन्क्लेव 2023 कर मुझे यह बुलाया है, उसके लिए इन्हें बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ जय हिंद, जय भारत, वंदे मातरम।
Thank you so much, sir. Can we have a huge round of applause once again? Well, with this, as sir has given us much insight about what MSME is doing on ground, we'll move towards the next panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for next panel discussion is RBI recast policy, regulatory and legal framework for microfinance. I would like to invite our esteemed panelist, Ms. Nikunj Oli, who is Unit Head, Private Sector Financial Institutions, South Asia. I think sir is leaving. So once again, we would like to extend our gratitude for your presence here. Thank you so much for being part of this today. We are really grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, requesting you all to kindly be seated. We will move ahead with the panel discussion. The panel discussion is on the topic RBI recast policy, regulatory and legal framework for microfinance. And the speakers, our esteemed speakers, are with us already. I would like to invite Ms. Nikunj Oli, Unit Head, Private Sector Financial Institutions, South Asia, Asian Development Bank, ADB. Let us welcome ma'am with a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, requesting your kind attention here. We are moving for the next panel discussion, and our next esteemed speaker, I would like to invite Ms. Shilpa Mankar Aluwalia, who's partner Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas & Co. Please welcome ma'am with a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And to moderate this session, I would like to invite Ms. Sumedha Bose, Assistant General Manager, Research and Solution, Mosaic Digital. She's going to moderate the session, ladies and gentlemen. Let us welcome her with a huge round of applause. The panel discussion on RBI recast policy, regulatory and legal framework for microfinance. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Veronica. And thank you, Shilpa and Nikunj, for being here. I'm glad to have all women's panelists, right? I think I've been very lucky since morning. But yeah, thank you, audience, for being patient. We have, almost concluding the event today with this session of ours, right? And policies, right? Policy frameworks, definitely we spoke about at length in the previous sessions already, where we realized that yes, this is one segment which needs a lot of hand-holding, right? And RBI has, for one matter, which is a huge stakeholder in this whole space, have done a lot of recast in, to kind of facilitate this segment, right? And if I'm not mistaken, they work on primarily 5 guiding pillars, right? They work for the protection of microfinance borrowers. They work for competitive forces enablement, right? So that there is a good market space being created. They're obviously working for customer protection and flexibility, right? Having said this, Shilpa, and I come directly to you as part of the session as to what major policy measures have you seen that have been put in place to kind of really enable this segment in the past? Like, what's the track record like? And you've seen them really delivering impact.
Sumedha, you're absolutely right. I think this sector has been a focus area. Financial inclusion has been a big focus area. And, the JAM Trinity is something that's been talked about a lot by the RBI and the government, which is effectively the Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile access, which have been very sort of key pillars to achieving the financial inclusion objective, and a lot of policy around each of those, which has worked really well. I think a good starting point for a discussion on, when you talk about financial inclusion and policy behind it, is to look at the Financial Inclusion Index, which the RBI came up with. This is the second year running. From, last year to this year, we've seen a jump, which is good news. But I think if we break down the components of that index, what are you really looking at? You're looking at financial access, financial usage, and quality. And in terms of, I think it'll be useful to just run through very quickly how we're scoring on each of these. So if you look at access, I think we're doing very well. In terms of mobile penetration, the whole digitization revolution, even on the supply side, there is a lot of credit. I mean, now if you look at the microfinance sector, it's dominated by banks, SFBs. It's not just the smaller MFIs. So I think there's a lot of capital, a lot of finance backing this sector. So on the access side, even infrastructure, there's credit information, there's data. So we're doing very well on access. When you look at the other two, that's where we don't score very well, which is usage and quality. Now, usage, to really have usage that's meaningful, from a policy perspective, I think you cannot ignore the financial literacy. And as we move into a more digital financial services ecosystem, digital literacy. Because I may have a mobile, but unless I know how to download an app, how to use it, how to access my sort of savings, how to make payments, that's as important as understanding the importance of savings and credit. So I think in this environment, both financial and digital literacy are critical, and the RBI has been pushing that agenda very aggressively. They have financial and digital literacy centers. And I think from a policy perspective, what would really help is if we incentivize the private sector to also focus on these areas, whether it's, sort of credits or other forms of tax incentives, because I think the regulators alone and the government alone cannot achieve this. It has to be a partnership. So I think that's one area where, we can see more of a policy push. And when you move to the third limb, which is quality, so we have access and usage, but what is the quality of the, of the financial product that we're really delivering to the marginalized sections, the unbanked sections? And if you view credit as the first point of contact, so, you give a loan, are we really leveraging that relationship? Are we really then building on other financial products like insurance or savings or investments, onto that first touch point, which is credit? Are we using data intelligently? Because today, with the fintech boom, there is definitely a lot of access to data. Are we also, the whole eShakti program to sort of digitize data around self-help groups, are we using that intelligently to customize solutions, to see what does the customer really want? Are we focusing on the customer needs. And I think when you're looking at quality of financial products, I think that will become critical. And I see the next generation of innovation really being in terms of moving away from the standardized, homogenized products to using, data to actually customize solutions for consumers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Shilpa, for, alluding to it and articulating it so well. You really brought out those three nuances. And I think largely even today in the previous sessions, we had a lot of talk on the access bit. That has been well established, right? Nikunj, coming to you, you are a executioner in this whole space, right? And you are on the ground. You're actually facilitating, representing ADB, and you're doing a lot of work in the microfinance and the MSME bit. How have the regulations really helped you? Like, you feel that you are in sync with what is really required to deliver what Shilpa just alluded to?
Sure. Thank you for that. If you can hear me. When the RBI came up with the first set of regulations about a decade ago, there were several challenges, right? MFIs faced several challenges. Us as investors also faced several challenges in trying to get the MFIs to do more impactful work. I think one of the biggest issues we had was it was very much compliance-based lending. And that took away a lot of the things that MFIs had been doing well, the financial literacy part, the really understanding the client part. It sort of ended up becoming a checklist. Do you qualify on the income? How many loans do you have? It took away from that. It took away from a lot of the innovation that the MFIs could do. And it became a volumes game, right? Everybody was rushing to lower their operating expenses. That did lead to a lot of innovation, especially around technology. But what it took away from was on the product diversity side. As Shilpa already talked about, right, credit has always been there, and that's a very short-term fix. And a lot of the clients that they cater to are looking for the short-term fix, but they're not planning for the future. There's no product delivery in terms of savings and deposits, no long-term thinking around how to plan for the future, be it through pensions, be it through insurance. MFIs didn't really have that incentive from the government side. I think the impact investors that came in brought in some incentive, but that was more, we'll get you financing and you will have to do X, Y, and Z, do more wash, do more green, do solar lamps, do, electrical vehicles, or rather the three-wheelers. So everything that was being done was investor push, and it was being done in piecemeal, not as a strategic initiative from the MFI. And then those sort of fizzled away. And I think, the underlying clients that could have benefited from a lot of these services did not. And the new regulations that have come out since last year, I think they leave a lot of room for innovation now. There's not a race to cut down on operating costs and manage within the pricing that was prescribed, right? They can do risk-based pricing, product-based pricing. They can offer larger loan sizes. I think there still needs to be a lot done in terms of providing long-term financial solutions. In the field, I really haven't seen many. There are a few examples of NBFCs that are working on, catering to the bottom of the pyramid, especially on helping them plan for the future. Even doing some wealth management stuff with whatever little savings that the client has. And I think that's where the regulator focus should be, rather than just on the credit and short term. How do you incentivize MFIs to offer long-term solutions for clients, and what sort of carrots can be provided for that?
Absolutely, and thank you for being so candid about it, because that's exactly our observation as well, that there's a lot of work being done, but in a very sporadic manner, right? And Shilpa, I come back to you on this, that what do you think are the challenges that still remain, which need to be addressed immediately from a very, very policy standpoint? from a very legal framework issues. Anything that is really a big pain point that you wish to be addressed right now?
So, Sumita, that's a great question actually, and something that, as lawyers, we're also sort of engaging with is what are the real challenges in terms of how to, push growth. And as everyone is talking about the $5 trillion economy, you really cannot ignore the MSME group, right? That's critical. So I think in terms of key challenges that this sector faces, I mean, I know there are several, but, I think there are two key sort of critical pieces that need to be addressed. One is just access to credit, and that's what we're talking about. And the second is just the ability, the ease of doing business. I mean, I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs sitting in this room will know that to start a small business, sometimes you need as many as 15, 18, 20 licenses, just to get your operations off the ground. So how can the ecosystem really help streamline that process? Recently, I mean, in this budget, the government actually did sort of indicate that they are looking to making this process easier by using single sort of identifiers. For example, PAN has been identified as a single identity document for a lot of businesses when dealing with regulatory and government organizations. And I think if we look at PAN for business, what Aadhaar did for the individual, you can look at PAN as a single data point for licenses, clearances, approvals, KYC, onboarding, but also data generation. I mean, if everything I do is linked to my PAN, and as we're moving to a world that's more and more digitized, I as a small business actually generate a lot of valuable data which I can then use to my advantage, whether it's to access credit, whether it's to streamline operational efficiency or business. So I think centralizing data and utilizing it effectively can actually really help, fuel data-driven growth. And when we're looking at, the second challenge, which is access to credit, again, I think, the fintech sector has a lot of solutions in terms of how to solve for that by using alternative credit scores to give new to credit businesses and customers access to formal credit and financial inclusion. And then, like we discussed earlier, you can layer on other products onto that. So I think there is a vision, there is a roadmap. I think we all need to sort of move towards that.
Sure. Nikunj, coming to you from something that Shilpa mentioned, I see a little bit of difficulty here. Like Shilpa mentioned, reference to PAN, right? We are looking at 99% of the MSME being the micro people, right? And not even small, not even medium, right? You really can't expect them, all of them, to have a PAN. That I think that will be the biggest stumbling block at the very first place. So how do you manage data at your end when you are, because lack of data I feel is the biggest challenge when you as a bank are trying to, address this segment. How do you manage data?
So we are one layer removed, I would say, from the retail, because we would lend to microfinance institutions who would then lend to micro clients or micro enterprises. I think a lot of the painful sticking points were early on, when they were implementing Aadhaar card, because a lot of the clients on the ground did not have records of birth, their birth certificate. There was confusion around how many ID cards they had, the ration card, the voter card, none of the dates matching, right? But I think a lot of those issues were resolved, and I think MFIs really took it on themselves to focus on Aadhaar, to help clients link their Aadhaar card to a lot of their accounts. And it also has become a base for, biometrics as well. And there's a lot of Aadhaar-linked payments that are done. And especially during COVID and following demonetization, actually, the move towards mostly cashless sort of transactions, I think that incentivized the MFIs, the service providers, and the clients to switch to digital Aadhaar-linked or Aadhaar-based sort of payment systems, right? And that only got better during COVID, when you couldn't do, the face-to-face interactions. And I think it becomes more of a challenge when you get to the micro-enterprise stage, right? I think there it's still a challenge. But I think government, I think that there's a lot that's being done to harmonize this. It's not perfect. Micro-enterprise still suffer a lot, and they get ignored quite a bit because, you know, you have your microfinance on the retail side, you have your larger NBFCs, banks doing the SMEs, and it's the missing middle, you know, the smaller enterprises that really do suffer because of issues around having paperwork, having identification. But we see that that's also slowly being addressed.
Okay, that brings us to the last week of the session, and we are also running out of time. Quickly, we spoke of access, quality, and third thing being, you know, you said about, you know, so my point is that we are talking about regulation. Is it the job of only one stakeholder like the regulator who, you know, if say you have the regulations in place today, right? You think that's going to solve everything? Or there are more stakeholders who are required to make all of this, you know, come together. You know, what's your take on it? You know, you definitely are representing the law bit, but how do we get this rolling? You know, because otherwise we'll always be passing the buck, you know, to someone else that, oh, the regulations are not in place, hence and so on. So who all are the major stakeholders that you see that can come together and give this whole segment a complete impetus?
You're absolutely right. You know, I think the regulator is always the first entity or the first group that you look at, right, for change or to fix problems or for growth. But I think to really fuel the next generation of growth, it actually needs all stakeholders of the ecosystem to come together. And, you know, if you sort of position this as four corners of a room, I think you know, the regulators must partner with the suppliers of credit in this case, so the banks and the, you know, the SFPs and the NBFCs, the capital providers, along with the social impact team and leaders, the you know, organizations that are leading the social impact change. And the fourth, I would say, is tech. Because today, you know, we can see how tech can transform, you know, how you do business and how you can access financial solutions. So I think there really needs to be a partnership with all four to really achieve change.
Thanks. Nikunj, your take on this?
No, I fully agree with Shilpa, and I would really focus on the tech and the ecosystem part of things. Because, you know, one example we talked about earlier is NPS Lite, right? So it was a government scheme for providing micro pensions. The MFIs did a great job of distribution, but then it fizzled out because there wasn't that ecosystem, you know, the awareness, the education was missing. The clients didn't really know what they were doing. But today, I think this ecosystem, with the help of technology, has really built and picked up as well. You know, we've seen insurtech companies that are now saying that, you know, clients can do daily deposits through their wallets. Right? And there's an understanding of, you know, what the product can be, what it can do for them. So there's a lot of effort being done on hand-holding clients through these technology providers. You have insurtechs who work with clients to complete insurance claims. Right? Now the clients understand the value of that. So there's this real ecosystem that's coming together, and I think MFIs are poised to deliver more services now. And then maybe it won't fizzle out like in the past, how it has, right? Yeah, so I'd like to end with that.
Cool. Thanks Nikunj, thanks Shilpa for sharing your views on this. And yes, regulators alone can't do it, but yes, a lot of expectations are there from them. But yeah, rightly said, there are 4 key stakeholders who all have to come together to make this a huge success and a contributor to the $5 trillion economy that we are looking forward. Thank you. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you, audience.
Thank you so much, our esteemed panelists. Very well moderated, ma'am. Can we please come forward for the group picture? Can we have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I must say that a very insightful discussion it was. you. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Moving ahead, we have a special address on technology, a key enabler building competitiveness of MSMEs. And for this address, I would like to invite Ms. Anna Roy, Senior Advisor, Niti Aayog, on the dais. Please welcome ma'am with a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. First of all, my apologies to the organizers for the last minute change. But I'm happy to be here amidst all of you. And I just was hearing the previous panelists talk about, I think the session was on finance or credit. And all they spoke about was really technology. So that should kind of tell us the era that we are living in, where technology kind of defines what are the structure in all the various sectors that we come across, whether it is MSMEs, whether it is any other sector. Now, I head the vertical of data and frontier technology in Niti Aayog, and in that role for the past 6.5 years, I have led many initiatives around the technology space. So when we talk about technology, it's really the cyber-physical technology that we come across, and where the digital space has really come into our physical world and is really transforming that world in many ways for the betterment. We are able to overcome access barriers, we are able to overcome information asymmetry, and we are able to kind of, address many of the challenges, age-old challenges leveraging the technology. Since its launch in 2015, the Digital India movement actually ushered in this phase. And today, when a finance panel or any other panel, when the focus is on technology, that shows that the building blocks of technology which were built under Digital India mission are now really, we are able to reap the fruits. So MSME is not really distinct from that. MSME is also benefited. And I would like to kind of refer to few of the generic issues on technology without going into the specificities. First of all, the model that India is now taking to the rest of the world, and it is one of the key priority areas highlighted by India in its presidentship of G20, is public digital infrastructure. It started off with India Stack, and it transformed the way digital payments were happening. The payment entire scenario was transformed, and riding on the success of the India Stack, similar such stacks are being ideated, built in other sectors. One of these was in a sector like logistics. And it was which is called ULIP, Unified Logistic Interface Platform. This was launched by Honorable Prime Minister last year. What is that doing? It is basically replicating India's stack. So what you are doing is, because of the digitization and because of the immense compute infrastructure which is there today, we are able to not only aggregate data but also do a lot of computational analysis on that data, and we are able to develop bespoke tools. So ULIP, like India Stack, is really getting at one place all the data relating to the logistics sector. As of now, it is not venturing into the private data generation, but only the government agencies. So you have customs, you have, GSTN is being onboarded, but that's a bit sticky because of various regulatory considerations which we need to abide by. But you have ports, you have airports, you have road transport. So what does it really do? It gets the data, it standardizes the data, it has already developed a data sharing protocol. So this data, which was earlier available to big tech companies or big companies with deep pockets, today even a startup can come on ULIP and access the data, and using that data they can develop bespoke tools. The previous panelists spoke about bespoke tools where, today you are able to cater and you need to cater to that specific demand. It's more catering to the demand side of the market. So this is the revolution which has been brought in by building the building blocks. Coming to MSME, now you already have heard, I saw Secretary MSME going out, so you must have heard from him all the digital interventions in the sector to address various MSME related issues. I will not go on that. What I will like to highlight is something which Niti Aayog has done in the space of women entrepreneurship, which includes MSME. And MSME, actually, the ministry is one of our partners in that initiative. It is a public-private partnership initiative. And what it does is that, it recognizes that 1,001 things are happening, but the beneficiaries are not aware. So, when you see the life journey of any particular activity, one of the major items is dissemination, last mile dissemination. If that does not happen seamlessly, then the government may have, n number of schemes. The ecosystem players may do a number of things, but if that last mile MSME is not aware of that initiative, they cannot benefit from it. So this is also a very, very major thing which needs to be done, and that is what WEP is really catering to. That is showcasing or discovery of the initiatives which are out there in the universe relating to enterprise. While we talk about WEP as women entrepreneurship, because that is how it started, but it is gender agnostic. We hardly have anything which is only, apart from a couple of initiatives at the center or state level, it is really gender agnostic, and whatever we are doing on WEP will cater to the larger ecosystem of entrepreneurs as well as MSMEs, and we have also brought in within our fold SHGs and FPOs and everybody. So it is the second important thing, which is also a message for the ecosystem players to come join hands with the government, is that while the government was enabler, it ideated, it initiated the entire process of establishing WEP, but the progress of WEP is really based on the community. It is not a government funded initiative. It has been funded by the community, where say Flipkart has developed one particular module. MasterCard is developing other module. Then you have foundations funding development of the platform. Also content aggregation. One of the projects which actually has been funded under its research project by Niti Aayog is to identify central government and state government schemes where there is some entrepreneurial assistance component. So till date we have identified 77 schemes, central government, more than 400 state governments. We have mapped it in a manner that it is amenable to a smart matchmake. We took this proposal to MSME, and MSME said, look, you have not covered these many schemes of MSME, which refer to MSME. And now we are working with MSME ministries to upload those schemes also. So what does it do? We have used tools like AIML to have a smart matchmake. Now, if I am sitting in Raipur, I do not need to call up any number. All I need to do is fill my profile and put in my query. and the relevant initiatives, whether it is government schemes, whether it is non-government initiatives, whether it is events, whether it is incubators or accelerators, all of that will come on my homepage. It is in a process of development. We will be putting in such, features where based on my profile, the platform will also push data on my homepage, which is relevant to my journey or my query. We have also developed a community page where people can interact with each other, solve each other's problems, and also, grow as a community. So all I wanted to say, you just need to have that approach, you need to have that thought. Technology enables you. Technology is only a means, it's not the end. Developing a platform is not the end. We must realize that technology helps us achieve certain goals, so we need to identify those goals. What the goal which I picked up and which I spoke about just now is actually of information asymmetry, and how can we leverage the technology to overcome that. Similarly, technology can be used for, like I said, ULIP. ULIP will also benefit MSMEs. Because instead of, buying some important service, buying some very exclusive or very, expensive service, now startups will be able to use those, the data to develop, bespoke tools, whether it is track and trace of any cargo, whether it is warehousing facilities to be made available. So it has to be a use case driven exercise. Technology should be seen as an enabler, but for that we must be aware about the potential of the technology that it offers, and we must learn to work together. And when I say together, I also mean, media houses like Mint. They must showcase initiatives like WEP, they must showcase various other such steps being taken, which are leveraging technology to overcome the need of the ecosystem. We need to stop looking towards government to solve all our problems. As a community, we have to come together, look for solutions, and wherever required, seek support from the government. And as our Honorable Prime Minister says, government is an enabler. We do not want to crowd out the private sector. And his philosophy is minimum government, maximum governance. And I think WEP as one of the initiatives is really on those lines. And I would also urge people who are in the audience to reach out to us and work with us to build this community so that we join hands to solve our problems, and also then take it to the rest of the world and say, hey, we have built this, we can offer it to you. This is a public digital infrastructure. We can help solve your problems also. So that is how we become part of the global value chain. So that is about it, which I wanted to discuss. The previous panelists spoke at length about technology and credit. You all know what great work that technology is doing where credit is concerned, where Sehmati has now, the consent-based data sharing. So, and data is the key. But on one side, you have US kind of a model where all data is housed with big techs. On the other, you have the European GDPR where they put so much of shackles on data, it becomes very difficult to leverage data. And India, I must say, has been a front runner where it has identified its problem and it has come up with a technology solution which talks about consent-based data sharing, which allows us to, in some time, these are baby steps have been taken, but we are looking at a future where we are moving away from collateral-based lending. And for that, I feel for MSME is huge. First of all, it allows you to develop a credit profile, which is not a credit score in the very traditional sort of a way. It allows you to, go beyond collateralization for seeking credit. And it also allows you to take small ticket credit, which our present system of PSBs and other banks are not able to kind of cater because of various establishment costs. Lastly, the previous panelist spoke about, MFIs. Niti Aayog, and I was heading that exercise, has brought in an approach paper on digital banks. How can we have full stack digital banks? And we are saying, okay, you don't want PSBs to have a competition because the competition will be unfair. Then why don't you have this digital bank cater to the segment to whom PSBs are not catering to? And that is the argument given, and we hope that in due course such banks are allowed which caters to MSMEs simply by reducing establishment costs, simply by leveraging technology and meeting that demand of credit gap, which is stark, which is huge, and which is facing us every day. So my idea of this talk, it is an unstructured talk. Please pardon me if I'm not making much sense, but what I wanted to say is that identify the problem, work backwards, work as a community, use technology as an enabler, as a tool to meet your, goals, and then it is a win-win for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your words. Well, as you rightly mentioned, that together we grow as a community, and it is very important that together as a community we grow. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the conclusion of today's conclave. I would like to thank our venerated speakers and all the esteemed delegates who have taken out the precious time to be present here. We would like to extend our warm gratitude. Once again, thank you so much for attending the National MSME Conclave 2023, jointly organized by MSME DFO, New Delhi, and co-powered by SIDBI. Also, don't forget to put the hashtag MSME Conclave 2023 and tag us on Twitter @LiveMint. I would also like to thank our partners, presenting partner, Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, co-powered by our partner, SIDBI, Small Industries Development Bank. I would also like to extend our gratitude to NSIC, our partner, National Small Industries Corporation, Mudra, Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency Limited, and Khadi India. Thanking all the partners and all of you for your presence with this, I, Veronica Sharma, signing off. Namaste.